My guest today is Jean Liu, a filmmaker from the UK and China. Now, she specializes in telling stories about personalities and subcultures that put a highly individual stamp on the issues of broader interest. Now, her portrait style films have been featured at South by Southwest, Slam Dance, and numerous other film festivals around the world. Now, Jean's vivid, brand new short film, Corpse Fishing, explores grief and longing in a marginalized community. The short film follows a despairing young girl who strikes a deal with a stranger to go fishing for bodies in a desperate attempt to find her missing father. Now, this film was presented at the Tribeca Film Festival and was part of the official selection at Holly Shorts and was made as part of Indeed's Rising Voices program, an initiative set up to discover, invest in, and share stories created by the BIPOC filmmakers and storytellers. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome writer-director Jean Liu and her Oscar-qualifying short film, Corpse Fishing, to the show. Welcome, Jean.
Hi, good to be here.
It's great to have you here, and what an incredible film. But for you, what inspired you to want to be a filmmaker?
What inspired me to want to be a filmmaker? It's something that I have always looked up to and didn't realize was a real job necessarily. I took a bit of a detour into finance for a while. That was my major in college, and yeah, worked as an investment analyst for a number of years in London before sort of finally deciding that I could no longer ignore the itch and it needed to be scratched. So yeah, not the most straightforward path to filmmaking, but it was always there and it was always something that I loved dearly. It just took me a while to figure out how to make it happen.
Yeah, it's an interesting choice of career for many filmmakers, and either you fall into it, or you have to figure it out, or you just go and do it and see where it lands. But for you, I am not surprised that your new short film, Corpse Fishing, is Oscar qualified. I mean, the first time I saw it was at Holly Shorts, and I knew when I saw this film, there's just something about it that I thought this is the one we're going to have to watch because we're going to see how far this goes. So when you were Oscar qualified, I was not surprised. Uh, but this is the type of film, in my mind, that has a great opportunity to get shortlisted, possibly even nominated. But I have a question because this is probably one of the most unusual storylines I've ever seen. So why did
Mhm.
you use body fisherman as the basis to tell the story?
Um, well, first, thank you so much. I'm really glad that you like the film and see the potential in it. Corpse fishers. I worked as a documentarian in China for a number of years, and one of my jobs was producing a series on unusual jobs in China, and that's how I came across the corpse fishers. So it's a real job; they really exist. They are out there in on the Yangtze River, um, fishing for corpses and selling the bodies to families that are looking for their loved ones because burial rites are very important in Chinese. I wouldn't call it religion, but sort of just within Chinese sort of death culture, it's very important that you give your loved one a proper burial, and so finding the actual physical body is of extreme importance um, in many communities. And so yeah, that's what these guys do. And I encountered this job immediately. My filmmaker brain was set alight, and I desperately wanted to shoot originally a documentary about them, but it's just not possible to sort of get the access that you need to make a compelling documentary. And so, there's that you're dealing with lots of factors like dead bodies, grieving families, and things like that. It's not really an appropriate time to sort of turn up with the camera crew and a bunch of releases and sort of putting them in people's faces. So it was something that always really stuck with me. Just the job, the nature of the job, sort of what they represent and occupy within society, and it never. But the story I didn't have until I saw the prompt for Rising Voices, the program that funded the production, and the prompt was the future of work, and so that kind of got my brain ticking again. And I thought about this amazing job, and I thought how interesting it would be to explore the role of this kind of work in the future. Because I think that when you think of the future of work, oftentimes, your mind goes to AI or kind of automation and robots and things like that. And I was like, I bet there's going to be a lot of tech stories. But what about, human jobs will still exist in the future, and some of them may be pretty wild looking. And so I wanted to explore that. So it's set in this sort of post climate change disaster world. There's been a lot of flooding, and so that's why this girl is looking for her dad.
You know, I'm glad that you didn't go the tech route with the storyline because I have seen some from Voices that did do more of the tech side of things, but yours brings it more to a very strong human element. Now, when you were studying the corpse fisherman, how many bodies would they find in a year?
Oh, it could vary. They Some of the ones who are some of them do it casually, and maybe that's the wrong word to say. It's not like a hobby, but some of them are on the river for other reasons. They're either regular fishermen, or they maybe run like a little ferry service, and then so they're just doing this kind of like on the side for extra money. While some of them are out there full time. So it really just depends on kind of how frequently they're on the river, if there have been anything like um, natural disasters, that sort of thing. So it depends. But if you want to Google it, you will find some insane images of a difference in the story. And what they actually do is that real corpse fishermen, they don't store the bodies on the boat, they store them in the water. So you just see a wrist tied to the bow of the boat, and they'll just keep the body in the water because with low exposure to oxygen, it helps preserve the bodies. So you will see these images of these boats just with wrists kind of poking out of that. It's the only part that you can see poking out of the water, attached to the boats.
And you didn't do that in this film.
No, it was it was mostly story oriented. So I wanted to serve as a story and to be able to identify the bodies easily for our lead character. It was just easier if they were on the boat already rather than fishing
Yeah,
them out.
I agree because I think if this story was done with the bodies still in the water and all we saw was a hand and a wrist, I think it would have taken away from the true meaning of this film because you cover subjects of grief, longing, and family. Why was that important to showcase in this film?
Mm. It was the year that I wrote this film. I would say was a year of grief. I'd lost someone very close to me, who was very young, earlier in the year, and it was there was really no kind of sense to the death. It was pretty surprising, and the more I tried to sort of grasp at some kind of sense, it felt like it was always escaping me. Um, and I just wanted to explore that feeling of, well, what if there is no, ultimate conclusion? Like, what do we do with our lives? Do we suspend them, or do we, go on living? Um, and so it was that feeling combined with also this feeling that I had as a young teenager child, is that as an Asian, growing up in an Asian family, um, your parents very much treat you like a child. The child world is very separate from the adult world, and I feel like those two things are extremely separate. And no one really tells you exactly what is going on. You'll never explicitly be told the truth. It's just sort of something that you have to grasp at. And so the reason the character is so young is because she was a child, she was very much in child world, and she was not privy to a lot of the truths that the adults had. And so suddenly the adults have gone, and she's left alone with these like half truths that she can only grasp at. And here is this older man, this corpse fisher, who is probably the only person that she's encountered that hasn't mollycoddled her, and is like, okay, you want to see a dead body? Here's a dead body. Like, and I think that to her, that's very refreshing. And like, maybe, in some twisted way, that's like her only experience of the adult world.
Yeah, and you actually showed that in their first meeting because he said, "How old are you?" Because he's looking at her thinking that she's really young, and she just spouts off and says, "I'm 20." And
Mm-hmm.
and so that dynamic right there shows what you just explained, to where he's going to treat her whatever. He's going to look at her, if she says she's 20, he's going to treat her like an adult. But she still has this childlike quality to her, and she's trying to navigate life because she doesn't really know if her mother just disappeared or abandoned her, but she knows that her father is missing, so she doesn't have any family. And
Mm-hmm.
and the way that you brought this story, as an audience, we don't know if both parents, could they be alive, or are both of them dead. So you kind of kept that theory open. Why?
I think that where, as the audience, I really wanted them to be rooted in her world. We're looking at this from her point of view, and she really doesn't know. Like I said, she's been given half truths, and she just knows what she's observed, and so she can't remember because she was too young. What happened to her mom, and I think if she knew and she had the finality of the truth, then there would be no story because she wouldn't feel compelled to go looking. It's because she doesn't know, and she is really struggling to make sense of what is going on around her, that she does something so risky as to go and spend a couple of days on a boat with a stranger and his bodies.
Well, but it also shows too, she has that longing because there's this void in her life because of both parents. When
Mm.
when the fisherman said something to her, uh, now is her name pronounced Yan or Yan?
Yeah.
Yan. So when Yan says everywhere is awful, I looked at that and I'm like, everywhere is awful. And and to me it's like she has no place to go, and she only has grief and loneliness to keep her company. And that's how I saw that.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
So it's a very strong, the film is I mean, everybody that I know that have seen this film has loved it. And the way that you weaved the grief, the longing, and wanting family, and in a way, the corpse fisherman became family.
Yeah. I'm glad that you picked up on that. I think that they were both looking for some kind of family proxy. And I think that something Yan realizes after spending some time on the boat is, despite how ostensibly horrific it is, I think spending time with him, this old man who, wants to take care of her and treat her as an equal, is no worse than being out anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, there's the scene where, he's changing clothes because then he tells Yan to stay on the boat, and don't come out for any reason. And so, he's there and he's got the five bodies out there for one of the families to come by and see if any of the bodies belong to them. And then, of course, we know this situation arises. But then Yan, she rushes out of that boat to defend someone she doesn't really know. So
Mm-hmm.
it was like this instant connection, or this connection that started to grow for her to befriend him, but then come to his aid to fight for him and to defend him at the same time. And I really like that scene.
Oh, good. That was I mean, that was really an uphill battle to shoot, but I'm
Was
glad
it
that.
really? What was the challenge? What was the challenge?
Well, we lost the location to no the day before shooting, so that was an entirely like improvised, new blocking everything. Just okay, let's make this work. And then the dead bodies that we got, they just didn't look like dead bodies. They weren't laying right. Um, they looked like prop.
Mannequins?
And so everybody you see is someone from the art department who's gone through hair and makeup and is laying down on some very hot rocks face down.
Yeah, that must have been extremely uncomfortable for them.
But yeah, they pulled through, and everyone was very invested in making it look the best because everyone knew how sort of pivotal that scene was, and I don't think that it would have worked if you had even the tiniest bit of anything, sort of like visually snagging or distracting from kind of the emotional impact um, of the main characters.
I also noticed something in that scene, and it took me a while to finally my mental light bulb to go off. You shot that now not from the boat perspective, but when the corpse fisherman and the five bodies and the family, you shot that as a wide shot. There are no close-ups in that particular scene. Why?
Mhm. Yeah, it's shot as a just one wide shot. Because I didn't want to get too close to the violence of it. I think something that we were playing with throughout the whole film was just how much gore and how much violence do we want to show. And I decided to go kind of a more understated route because I I didn't want it to become sort of like voyeuristic. I wasn't. The idea of the short is not to um, rubberneck, I suppose, other people's grief.
Yeah, and you did this correctly because with the wide shot, in a way, it's like we're looking through Yan's eyes, watching this situation unfold. She's already dealing with what I would call some silent grief because
Mm-hmm.
she doesn't know the whereabouts of her parents, but she's watching a family. She's watching a mother go through her grief because now this mother sees the evidence that she has lost. Maybe it's her son or whoever it is. So she sees this firsthand. So a close up shot, like you said, would have intensified the violence, would have intensified the grief of the mother because the wide shot, we get that feeling. We feel what that mother has just realized. Oh my gosh. And if it's her son, she's like, my son is dead. But when she starts beating on the fisherman, I'm like, she's mad because he's going to charge her.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what that was about, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that was. It's her grief is so concentrated, and she has nowhere to direct it. And he becomes. I think he even says later on, I'm just a punching bag, and like that's kind of part of the
Yeah,
service.
exactly.
Yeah, and I think that this is not the first time he's been beaten up on the job. But it really, I wanted to include that because that's something that I personally have experienced a lot working in China. Is that there's I mean, famously there are no elections in China. You don't have a lot of political agency, and like there are things that there are plenty of things that are sort of out of your control in life. But then I think what happens is that people take these feelings of anger and injustice and they sort of funnel them or concentrate them on some other arbitrary target. And you see these like very random explosions of emotion, like very intense emotion often. And at first, when I first moved to China or first started working in China, I was maybe a bit confused by it. And then as you see a kind of pattern forming, like, okay, there, this isn't an isolated incident. This is a sort of way to cope.
Yeah, because she instantly went from grief to anger. And like you said, yeah, she's going to direct whatever emotion she's got going at that time because, you know, when the family is walking up there, there's that internal feeling of, I hope none of these bodies are my son. We'll just pick my son. And
Mm,
so there's going to be that internal hope. But then when that hope is busted, then the grief instantly hits, but then the anger hits. And the anger could go both ways. The anger could be from the fact that she's mad at him for wanting to charge her to get the
mhm,
body, or she's also angry that she's lost a loved one. So it's intense emotion, but you filmed it perfectly. And I want to ask you about the last body, Mr.
mm,
Suicide.
mm,
And and I love the small elements you put into this film and into the storyline because Yan said she knew of him and that he was an outcast just like her and the corpse fisherman. So I love the dynamic of the three together. Um, and then, you know, even though the dead man was not her father or a relative, she could actually relate to his status in the community, um, even though it was, even though his end was sad, right?
mhm. Yeah, I think that she, yeah, felt that he was some kind of kindred spirit now that she understands what it's like to be a corpse fisher. Also, something I should mention is that corpse fishers are very much marginalized because of what they do. Because, again, as with Chinese death customs, those that frequently touch dead bodies are obviously perceived to be unlucky or, kind of not somebody that you would want to be interacting with and like keeping as your close friend. And so that's part of the reason why he is very adamant that she should not come out of the boat or be associated with him, because he doesn't want her to be tarred with the brush that he has been tarred with. Um, and so even though she very much feels like that already, and when she hears of Mr. Suicide and she realizes that, okay, they're all in the same boat, she kind of wants to, she's like, she realizes that nobody else is going to pay him that respect and nobody else is going to give him the closure of a burial, so it would fall to her.
Wow, I mean, that's really like a double or a triple whammy in that scene because I because for me as an audience, I didn't know that a corpse fisherman would be looked at as someone you don't want to be friends with, the customs of possibly bad luck, um, and then Yan wanting to give him a proper burial, a proper send off, proper respect. And I'm sure those that take their own life are judged a different way.
Mm, yeah, I think that's something that pops up time and time again in various cultures and religions. Those that take their own life, somehow their death is considered different to.
Yeah, very, very much so. Now, I've got to ask about the ending of the film. And you probably get a lot of questions about this.
Mhm.
Because in the scene where, Yan is talking to the corpse fisherman, and wants to give the body that they called Mr. Suicide a proper burial. Was the ending scene, I should say the ending scene or the ending shot with the rocks, was that the proper burial?
Yes, that's what they're doing with the rocks.
Because I was trying to think. I mean, like, where did you film this, by the way?
We filmed this in San Gabriel Valley in LA, right next to a Renaissance fair that was happening maybe 50 feet from with the edge of the frame.
You know what? You literally had this film perfect. I mean, if someone told me South China, I would have believed it was South China, and because that's what I love about the magic of movie making, because you can make a scene, make everybody believe where it's at, and you did just that. Now, what makes this film incredible is not only the storyline, not only the acting, and the way that you weaved grief and longing and absence of family, and also the longing for family within this storyline. I understand that Pip White was your cinematographer. How did you two meet? And because the cinematography of your film is what I call cinematic Oscar quality. It's very rare in my eye. It is very rare to see quality that you can literally look at it and go, this film has a chance. And your film does that because of the cinematography. So, how did you come up with this incredible look?
Well, thank you. And Pip, I'm sure Pip will be thrilled to hear that as well. How did we come up with the look? Well, first of all, Pip White is, as the name suggests, very English. She's Caucasian, never been to China. So, yeah, already hats off to her for taking on this project and executing it so flawlessly because that was a big concern of ours was that we couldn't get to China. She's never been. She's trying to cheat Los Angeles for this place that she's never been, Long Beach for this place that she's never been. Um, we met through a BAFTA program. We were both BAFTA scholars for film school. And we met through that. It turned out that she was living across the street from me. And so BAFTA put us in touch. This was during COVID. And kind of started our relationship from there. And we, yeah, instantaneously sort of clicked. And I think it's a very important relationship, the one between cinematographer and director. And I think we just spoke each other's language. And I love being around her. And what you don't see on the screen is I think that we have a very good working dynamic on set, which is very important. I like to be quite calm on set, and I like to, not I don't know, not rock the boat too much. Like I like to have the metaphorical boat. And Pip is more of a firecracker, and I think kind of is the yang to my yin. And so yeah, it's a really great working relationship, and we worked off a lot of. I gave her a lot of references, both of the area and also of photographers that have taken photos in the area that I wanted to kind of reference in the film. And we also looked at this film, Memories of a Murder. That was our sort of cinematic reference. And yeah, we wanted to be ambitious. We had this money from Indeed and Rising Voices. We've shot films in the past before. We've shot shorts together before where there's been no money. We've been, yeah, running around, just me, Pip, and a camera, and sort of running from security guards and things like that, and like quite the just trying to get the shot before they kick us out, sort of thing. And so it was nice to be able to work with resources this time and get an amazing grip and gaffer team, and yeah, it was nice.
Yeah, I mean, did you storyboard this or did you just do a shot list?
We did storyboard, but something that was very important for this one was that we I knew it was going to be Pip, a cinematographer, and I knew it was going to be Tiffany, my editor, from the get go. And also, I was very pregnant. I shot this film 7 months pregnant, and then delivered the film the day after I delivered my baby. And so I always knew it was going to be a really tight post schedule. And so from very early on, I had involved the editor and Pip in every single conversation. And we had made sure that we were totally on the same page about every single scene, every single transition between every single scene, what the last shot and the first shot of every scene would look like. And exactly kind of what I was trying to do, just in the off chance that my baby came early or something, which I actually did, that the wheels would be greased and the machine would keep running without me. And so yeah, that was how we did it.
Who in the world was your colorist? Because that alone set this film apart. Because of the storyline, the color represented lifelessness, much like a corpse.
Yeah. We had an amazing colorist, Andrew Francis, who's based in the UK. He's also somebody who has worked with Pip and myself on previous shorts. And he did Hereditary, I believe. So he has yeah, an incredible portfolio of past work. I'm just very lucky that he loves working with Pip and agreed to come on this project.
I mean, what was your thought when you saw the final film?
I was incredibly moved. Not because it's like, oh, it's my own work and I am so. It was just that I knew every single component that had gone into it, and I knew how much work everyone else behind the scenes had done, and and the risks that we'd all taken to make it work, and kind of how much faith, I suppose, they had in this project that I initially came to them with. And so I was just very happy and touched that so many great talents had agreed to work on this and really come and bring their A game and make something so beautiful.
What's your favorite scene in the film?
Um, I think mine is also the one where the woman comes looking for her loved one. I think that, yeah, it's just, I'm really happy with how it looks, and it looks the most similar to what was in my head. I think before I even had a story, I had that scene in mind, and so to see it come to life um, was, yeah, very special.
But it was also the turning point because that's when the much deeper connection started to be birthed between Yan and the fisherman.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
yeah, it's a very strong sequence of scenes in this film from beginning to end. With this film being seen in numerous film festivals, what's been the crowd's reaction to it?
Surprising. I've had children coming up to me being like, I loved it. I wanted to see more bodies. And I was like, oh, okay, I've made a kid's film. And I didn't necessarily set out thinking that it would be child friendly, but the children love it. And yeah, it's nice to, I guess they relate to Yan, who is a child herself. But yeah, it's been nice to see, especially to hear from people who said that they don't normally watch films with subtitles, or they thought there was going to be a horror based on the title of the film. And so I think people have been surprised by it, because it is surprising, because I don't think many people have encountered this world before. And so yeah, it's nice to be able to surprise audiences and to give them something like unexpected. I always like it when I'm surprised at the cinema.
Yeah, because I always read the log line because I'm sent so many films, so I always read the log lines. And I did, definitely when I saw the title, horror was not on the table for me. I knew that this was going to be a drama,
Mm-hmm.
and but like I said, the first time I saw it was at Holly Shorts, and I was like, wow. And every year, there's always those films. I mean, you could get 100 films, and there's only going to be about three, four, maybe five films that you'll actually truly remember because there's always something about the film. And your film, the thing that gets my eye above all things is the look of this film. Because you nailed the story, you nailed the characters, you weaved the elements to bring them both together in this story in the midst of dead bodies. um, but this is one of those films. When I saw it, I went, "This is the film we're going to have to keep an eye on." It's just something about it. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a sixth film sense or what. But sometimes when you see a film, you're knowing, yeah, this one's going to rise above so many others, and you're in that category.
Thank you. Um, yeah, very, very
Well,
honest to
when
be.
you're at a festival, what are some of the questions that you're asked about it? Not the ones from the kids, though.
uh, just how did you come up with this story? Is it real? What's going on? What do you think about the rest of the time when you're not thinking about dead bodies? Um, Things like that. I think people are very surprised to hear that it's um, based on a true profession. Um, and yeah, I think that because we when I wrote the story, I did want an element of like sort of almost like a fairy tale. You know, the making of the deal, the 3 days in exchange for three bodies, and sort of that. There's that kind of like elements of fable to it that I wanted to include, and like the fisherman's boat is meant to resemble, the Styx crossing in Greek mythology, sort of thing. And so it feels almost not real, but actually the, there is these very strong elements of truth and reality weaved through it. So yeah, I think people are trying to pick apart that after they've seen it.
No, when I saw this film, I knew it was true to life. I mean, I didn't look at it as a fantasy or a made up story. And I was like everybody else. I'm like, so this is real? I mean, how many bodies do they find a year? I mean, I'm asking myself those types of questions because it's like, do that many people die and end up in the river? I mean, because it's like, if you go out into the river, I mean, you're just going to see a bunch of bodies floating around, or you pick up,
Mm,
a couple a day, or what is it? But this story is much deeper than just the bodies, because you do highlight the emotion of grief. I think longing is one of the emotions that a lot of people don't address or showcase in a film. We see loss a lot in film, but you bring an element that most people that I see have never even thought of. And in the way that you created two separate stories where, what happened to her father? You do kind of allude to what happened to her mother, but her mother never returned. So there's that big question mark. So, and I like elements like that because, okay, you've created those stories, but you allow the audience in a way to finish the story on their own.
Yes, I'm glad that you felt that you. I didn't want to be too prescriptive. I think I think you want to stretch it just enough that the audience does a little legwork themselves and arrives at whatever destination they choose to.
Yeah, and that's one of my favorite things for this year's films. A lot of filmmakers have allowed the audience to write the ending or to try to create an ending in their own mind as to what happened or how it should end. So and for me that allows everyone to remember your film longer.
I
So
think so.
yeah, but you have done a wonderful, stellar job with corpse fishing. And oh, how did you cast this film? Because I recognize the fisherman.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I kept looking at him and going, "Why do I know him?" And so, of course, I live on IMDb, so I looked it up and I'm like, "Oh, wow." And he has a long resume for film, and I know a lot of actors do have a long resume when it comes to short films, but I recognize. I'm like, I didn't know his name at first, but I'm like, I know that face. So
Uh-huh.
it was familiar to me when I saw the film.
Yeah. Oh, great. I was very worried about casting because, we're shooting a Mandarin only film in LA, and we have somebody who's very, very young as the lead um, character. And I was just worried that we wouldn't be able to find, like, thread that needle and find somebody who spoke great Mandarin and was the right age, had the right look, and also had like a maturity to her, which I think is extremely important. Um, and I really felt like without that piece, I wasn't going to be able to um, land the film the way I wanted. And so, yeah, we worked with a casting director, Matthew Glazner, who was incredible, and he also doesn't speak Mandarin Chinese, and so he just kept on. He was like, I don't know how this person's Chinese is, but and we just watched, yeah, tapes and tapes and tapes and tapes, until we found Harmony. But when we met with Harmony, we knew it was instantaneous. Like, she was so mature and so thoughtful, and had so many of her own opinions about the character and kind of what the character was going through. It was really refreshing to talk to someone that age about, yeah, things like death.
Yeah, because and I loved the dynamic between the two. She is she's young, she's still innocent. There's a softness to her, even though she's trying to be a grown up. And then for him, he wasn't so he wasn't so hardened because there was still this element of humanity within him. And I think that's what really added to his character and then added so much more to this film. Instead of him being a character that would be really hardened,
Mm.
very weathered, um, maybe cynical, death no longer bothers him. But he didn't have those qualities because he still sees what death does. He sees what death causes to the family. So I love that he still had a little bit of that humanity left in him. And I think that's what drew both characters together.
Hmm. Yeah. He, I think the corpse fisher role rather, was a really tough one. And we auditioned lots of actors who their take on it was that he was a creep, or that he was going to be, yeah, a sort of a weirdo, or they really took the pariah part and kind of that they took that part really seriously, whereas what I wanted more to go for was just that he's a regular guy and this is his job, and it doesn't matter what your job is. You tend to become sort of numb to certain parts of it, or it becomes very quotidian, very everyday. Um, Things that other people from the outside looking in will be like, that's gross or crazy, or how do you do, for them it's it's just it's shop talk, it's what they see every day. But at the same time, yeah, he's right up against grief every single day, and has a healthy understanding of how to deal with it.
Yeah, and he doesn't bury it, which,
Mhm.
no pun intended. Um, he just allows it to do what it wants to do, and that's where the human element in this film comes from. And ladies and gentlemen, Jean Liu's vividly haunting short film Corpse Fishing explores grief and longing in a marginalized community. It's set in southern China, but this mysterious short follows a despairing girl named Yan as she strikes a deal with a stranger to go fishing for bodies in a desperate attempt to find her missing father. This incredible story is inspired by body fishermen in China who scan the river looking for cadavers, which they then sell back to grieving families. The cinematography of corpse fishing is worthy to be Oscar shortlisted and even nominated. The cool gray coloring of the film adds to the story. The dialogue between Yan and the corpse fisherman is something you want to pay attention to, as it tells a much deeper story of Yan's grief, her loneliness, and a desire to either find her family or find a new one. Now, Corpse Fishing is a must see short film and one of the best films in this year's run up to the 97th Academy Awards. For me, I am definitely keeping an eye on this one. And Gene, I want to thank you so much for sharing your incredible film with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun to talk about it.
Well, you have an excellent, stellar film. And ladies and gentlemen, if you ever attend a film festival and Corpse Fishing is there, make sure you're sitting in the audience, because you're going to see exactly what I saw: an Oscar quality film that we long for. A film, well, it puts the cinema back in cinematic. So for me, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for watching, and I'll either see you at the movies or from the red carpet.